Yes, I would also like to say something to the economic crisis question, but okay, iconic images are polar bears. We know them quite well. We could equally show, and we did, Inuit people living there. So if I was talking before from shifting the climate change image out of the environmental niche into a civilization question, then we have to face the human. We have to show the human face of the problem. I think it is sure that the planet, in one way or another, will survive. Climate change is, so to say, not a problem for the planet. It's a problem for civilization. And the question of how civilization, if yes, how civilization can survive under the conditions of climate change in the following centuries. So we have to shift the problem and to make clear that we are talking about humanitarian problems, and at the same time, of course, it is the role of environmental NGOs like Greenpeace to show that there is also a kind of moral implication towards creatures that don't have a say in that whole debate, but are affected strongly. Of course, there is no, fixed nature that has to be preserved in a way that this nature in the year of 2009 is the one nature, the one and only that has to be saved. But it has to be clear that the human impact, the impact of this one species has gone so far that it changed the whole planet. So I would say pictures of affected people are really iconic enough, I think, to address the whole problem. And on the economic question, I just would say, yes, I think there has been a shift in the media. If you ask me as an NGO, I don't think that it's sufficient. It's now talking a lot about the famous Green New Deal, which has also risky implications, because if we just go on an efficiency way, you can ruin the planet also by efficiency if you don't set at the same time absolute caps of emissions or of resource use. If you have efficient cars all over the world, it won't help so much compared to today. Just a question of, and this leads also to the question of the scenario behind and the root causes. We have to, of course, address the way we are consuming and the way we are using resources on this planet. But I think there has been a movement in the German media anyway. There has been strong critics on the urgency packages, on the economic packages, for example, on cars or on other sectors. I cannot judge so much the foreign media, but I have the impression also on the Financial Times, and the issue is dealt in quite a different way than before. And I think also this is a question of raising facts and really showing what could be also the positive side and the chances for a green development in this story.
I'd just like to come in at this point and say, something you mentioned earlier about sensationalism and some of the stunts that Greenpeace in particular gets up to. We had this big conference in Washington yesterday, and Greenpeace activists apparently hoisted this huge banner saying, too big to fail, I think, reflecting what was said of AIG, for instance. So in a sense, marrying the issue of, the economic meltdown with this, and then, kind of weighing in on that. I think these messages, as much as headlines and other things, kind of catch the attention of people, I do think dramatic action or, kind of really pithy, smart quotes are essential in order to direct attention to a problem, if not actually find the solutions. So just keeping it out there, keeping it on the agenda, reminding people constantly that disasters can happen, or that a particular segment is being ignored, or that we're taking instant action on the economic front, whereas we don't really think there is a sense of urgency that's warranted when it comes to environmental issues. I think just reminders like this, and I think some Greenpeace activists apparently were arrested or held at least, and I think you know, that calls for media attention, and some of us will really put it out there. So why not? If that's a way into a story, I think that's a good thing.
Walter Amann?
I just would like to address the icon imagery. I think that's a very good way to get emotion in. It doesn't always have to be only the catastrophe itself as a static element. I think taking the human face of climate change, as Stefan has explained it, taking the human face into consideration, it gives us much more possibilities for a dynamic movement in climate change discussion. Therefore, I would very much appreciate if we would come up with much more images which we could use over time and develop over time, and not just always have these static catastrophe images.
All right, thank you very much. I think we have tackled those questions before we are supposed to finish at 7:30. One of our panelists have to leave. If we overrun a little bit, I have no problem with it if you have a few minutes more time, but since Otwin Ren has to leave first, I would like each of the panelists to give us, we want to end on something positive and something constructive. If you just had to say one point or one tip, perhaps the journalists for the scientists for the journalists, when it comes to provoking positive action, either from the general public or the politicians. How do we build the bridge to positive action on environmental issues or climate change? Otwin Ren, you have to go, so you have about 2 minutes maximum. Perhaps you can do it in 30 seconds.
Maybe 18 seconds? No. Well, thank you very much. I think in terms of the crucial question, does sensationalism sells? I would say it sells, but it wears off. And I think that's a very crucial thing. And if you look about, all these suicide bombings in Iraq, they were headline news for a while, and then they were on page 3, now they're on page 10, and if they're not more killed than 10, they're not even in the news anymore. So in a sense, we're getting used to sensations. And I think that's a real problematic aspect because we somehow destroy our own empathy. And that's why I believe that this kind of building on more and more sensationalism and dramatizing things is not going to help us because everybody's doing the same thing and then we just start with a new level field. So my suggestion is to use other fields in which things get attractive in the media. And one thing certainly has been mentioned is human touch. If you can make a story in which you have somebody affected by something, and if it's just a single person, it may be much more effective than having a statistics of 10 million. Actually, Stalin said this, but in a different context. The second point I would like to make is, which is related to this, if you feel that you can say something that it could happen to the one who is reading it, but it doesn't happen to him. So it gives him a little bit of feeling of relief on one hand side. It could have happened to me. On the other side, it also tells him, well, I could be the next one, so it may be good to do something about it. So I think that's a very important part. And this number 3 thing, I come back to the kind of iconic images. As a matter of fact, I think the polar bear is the best image you can think of because it's the one that's the most charismatic animal that we have. If you have a big campaign, whatever, save the cockroaches, that would not work very well. Even save the foxes would not work very well. So I think using good images and making sure that these images have a lot of kind of symbolic meaning behind it, that carries more and actually leads more to consensus than anything else. We have seen with the photographs of Abu Ghraib and all these bad things that happened, with the US invasion in Iraq, it was not the Red Cross reports which had reported all of this. It was not Amnesty International, it wasn't Greenpeace, it were the pictures. That made the changes. And if we have the right pictures there that really move the hearts, I think the story which comes behind it will be much more effective than anything else. So with three elements, I think we can work. Human touch, it will or won't, or it does happen to me, and using the right imagery, then we don't have to sensationalize.
Thank you.